Hello, welcome to the new episode of Turkey Talks. Today, with Kadir joining me from Washington, D.C., we will be talking about a new chapter that could be opened between Turkey and Armenia. Kadir, a few days ago, Turkish Foreign Minister, in a televised speech, announced that there will be formal talks between the two countries, between Armenia and Turkey, and special envoys would be appointed, and right after that, a Turkish government appointed a special envoy, Serdar Kılıç, who was the ambassador of Turkey to Washington, D.C., whom you know quite well, as far as I know. Today, let's talk about this, whether there will be a new chapter in the relationship between Armenia and Turkey. But let's start, why such an initiative has started, why there was not so much, let's say, willingness on the parts of both countries to initiate such a dialogue. This was not actually expected, as far as I know. Can you please just tell us a little bit more about the background of this relationship, as well as why now there's a mood between the two countries to start a new dialogue?
Thank you, Talip Hocam. Actually, there were quite a few indications that this could be coming, but of course we didn't know when it would happen. And of course, you know, the relationship between the two countries has been non-existent for a long time. So it wasn't clear when it could be, because the President Erdogan did talk about normalization. He called on Armenia to normalize ties with Azerbaijan after the Second Karabakh War just a bit more than a year ago. But as you said, you know, it wasn't really expected to be this quickly, this rapidly. But of course, nothing is certain in terms of if we are going to get full normalization very soon. But things have been moving rapidly over the past year since the Second Karabakh War. Of course, there are issues between the two countries. You know, Armenia was occupying Azerbaijani lands for a long time, 30 years, and then, you know, Turkey sided with Azerbaijan, and there's a strong community in Turkey, pro-Azerbaijan community, and the previous efforts in, if I remember, it was 2009, at normalization did not succeed because of that, because there was a backlash inside the country in Turkey against that. But right now the dynamics are different. Azerbaijan took back its lands that were occupied by Armenia, and there's a new power dynamic. You and I discussed this with some guests in previous programs. But this would be very good for Turkey, and Armenia especially needs this opening. As you know, our border areas, Turkish border areas with Armenia, are relatively less developed compared to the rest of Turkey, and cross-border trade would be great for that region, but also diplomatically, from the US-Turkey relationship perspective, I think Turkey will have an easier time in Washington because, as you know, pro-Armenia lobbies in Washington, D.C., they have always complicated the US-Turkey relationship with their influence over Congress. So this looks like a good sign, but of course, we should be cautious how fast this could happen, full normalization, if it could happen very soon. But yeah, it's a strong step on the part of Turkey to announce this just 2 days ago.
Right, thank you very much. I think that's a good introduction to our topic, our discussion. And I feel that Turkish-Armenian relations were shaped by three different factors. One was, as you have just mentioned, Kadir, is Karabakh, invasion of Karabakh by Armenia in 1991 and 1992. That has created a lot of, I think, tension between the countries. And as you know, Turkey has actually recognized Armenia as soon as Armenia announced its independence from the Soviet Union. I think that was a positive start, at least, because there was not an expectation that Turkey would accept such a I think Armenia, but Turkey has done so. I think that was something should have been welcomed by the Armenian community all around the world. This is now less obstacle, I would say, because Azerbaijan reclaims its territory. Now there is a stable, I think, issue going on. This was the first issue. It's, I think, more or less over. And I think that was one of the most influential aspects of the Turkish-Armenian relationships, because Turkey always respected the Azerbaijan, as you know. This was the main reason to me that Turkey did not develop a full relationship with Armenia. As you have said, there is a strong public opinion. As long as there is an occupation in Azerbaijan, in Karabakh region, it would have not been possible for Turkish policymakers to make such a decision. But now this issue is over. Now, when I look at the new announcement in Turkey, when Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, Foreign Minister of Turkey, said that there will be new talks between the two countries, it was actually welcomed by Turkish public opinion. This time there isn't a resistance, or there isn't much of a, let's say, no to this sort of diplomatic approach, because the Azerbaijan is now quite happy, as far as I can see. Because in previous years, you would remember that when that incident took place in 1992, especially when Susha was occupied, that was the red line for Turkey. Then all the relations were cut off. The border was closed because the border was open before that. And secondly, there was no diplomatic relationships anyway. I mean, there was no appointment of diplomats by both countries. So this issue is now over, but there are two other issues that might play a role, as you said, because you are very cautious, and I share your cautiousness, because there was, you know, the football diplomacy, etc. So maybe you would remind those initiatives as well. But there are two remaining, I think, obstacles, as far as I can see, that might play a role. The Armenian diaspora, because Armenian diaspora played a huge role in the previous attempts that they actually put an end to the let's say negotiation works between the countries. The third one is, I think, still an important issue for Armenia, at least as far as the public consciousness is concerned. That's 1915 events and the claims of Armenia formally, and also Armenian lobbies all around the world, and some other countries that joined the club, accusing Ottoman Empire as the country that launched a genocide against Armenians, and that has been politicized. Now let's look at those issues as well, step by step. What is the position of Armenian lobby or Armenian diaspora now, especially in US and elsewhere, and what sort of role they can play in the coming months?
You're right. I wanted to ask you about the Turkish public opinion. Maybe we can come to that later. But yeah, the Armenian groups outside the country, as you know, in places like France, in places like the United States, they are quite strong, especially on certain parts of the political system. In the US, it's quite their lobbying campaigns have been effective on congressional members. But they particularly focused on the 100th year anniversary of the 1915 events. In 2015, there was a big push for this genocide recognition by the US president. And of course, it going through the congressional chambers. And those efforts largely failed. It didn't go far because the dynamic is often that Turkey is involved in so many major foreign policy issues that the United States deals with all the time, and White House often will prioritize Turkish relationship over something largely symbolic, because recognition of those events as genocide does not really change the situation on the ground. It doesn't change the sort of geopolitical dynamics on the ground, and you need to work with Ankara over so many issues, right? We've seen that in recent years, from all the way from Libya to Afghanistan. There are so many issues. Turkey is important for the White House. So the dynamic is often that White House will go to Congress and say, look, I understand, you know, your constituencies are really insistent about this, this recognition. They want it, but we have so many issues. We can't, you know, have bad relations with Ankara. That dynamic is changed also with the, you know, Second Karabakh War. After that, there was a again large sort of condemnation. Not large, I shouldn't say. It was very strong, but there was congressional voices against Turkey, sometimes more so than against Azerbaijan, actually, interestingly. But so they called on the US president, and Biden had promised this several times before during his career. Previous presidents like Obama had also promised to recognize the events as genocide. So what happened is that Biden basically, you know, made that announcement calling those events as genocide, and they used to always call it as the Great Calamity, using an Armenian phrase. So that changed, but as we've seen, it has largely remained symbolic. Turkey reacted to it, of course, but again, the US was pulling out of Afghanistan. US was worried about its Middle East policy. US was worried about Libya, Ukraine, Russia's influence in the region, so on and so forth. So there were so many issues that the White House had to work with Ankara. This remains something on the paper, but then the Armenian groups will continue to lobby and target Turkey, and as you said, they could play a spoiler role in this normalization effort, and they have done that in the past, and I'm sure they are already publishing stuff. We've seen some stuff about, attacking Turkey's positions, but the diaspora is also divided among them as well. They are not one voice anymore because of Turkey's importance, but also stability efforts in the region. We've seen that. So I don't want to make this too long, but the Armenian diaspora will be crucial, as you mentioned, and they can play the role of a spoiler. But at the end of the day, I think Turkey, if they have a realistic normalization with Armenia, which is in the interest of Armenia. I mean, Armenia has been closed for a long time, and their economy is really weak, and they are under the thumb of Russia, and they can't really do much. They can't move. So if they open up a little bit through Turkey, that's in their national interest. And I think eventually some, congressional leaders, U.S. politicians will have to recognize that, and the impact of the strength of Armenian lobbies around the world will weaken because of that. So maybe you could contrast that with the feeling you mentioned in Turkey about this most recent announcement. Yeah, it was interesting to see that there wasn't an immediate backlash at all. So how do you see it from Turkey?
Right, as you know, Turkey now is retuning its foreign policy to some extent, at least. The issues with United Arab Emirates, for example, there has been talks and visits by both countries, and also there's a talk that Turkey will establish similar kinds of mechanisms and relations with Egypt, with Israel, etc. So as you can see, there's an overall, I think, transformation in that sense. One might not call it, full transformation, but at least there is some sort of retuning of Turkish foreign policy in that sense. And also, I think Armenia is the next country that Turkey can do the same thing, because the major obstacle is now not there anymore. Yes, as you have said, There might be pressure from the Armenian diaspora. There might be also, public pressure from inside as far as 1915 events are concerned, because this is an important issue for the Armenian, I think, the state, society, Armenian identity. So this is one of the priority for the country. But as far as Turkey is concerned, this is not something that is Turkish foreign policy or the Turkish public opinion is shaped by. Yes, in April, each and every year, 1 or 2 weeks, people talk about this issue, but later on, people forget because there are many other dynamics and other issues, as you have just mentioned. Therefore, Armenia is there, but it is not a major part of Turkish foreign policy issues or the Turkish public opinion. But here, I think when Mevlut Çavuşoğlu made an announcement in Parliament, actually, I was watching when he did this announcement. There was no reaction from any parties, even the most, let's say, nationalist parties in the Parliament. They did not react to that because, as he said, this process will be in contact with, will be carried out in contact with Azerbaijan. Okay, that means Turkey will still look at the interests of Azerbaijan, and if Azerbaijani interest is compromised, Turkey will rethink its position. I think that is made public. That is the main reason why there's a Turkish public support at the moment to this initiative. Mm-hmm. But I think there is also a background to that. When we compare Turkey and Armenia as far as the public opinion is concerned, I think Turkish public opinion has always been soft and open to the Armenian, the opening of new chapters between the two countries. In 2005, there was a effort of establishing a joint history commission, for example. Turkey wanted to have a depoliticization of the 1915 events. Yes, Turkey also recognized that, both, I think, sides, Turks and Armenians, suffered at the time. But it is the job of the, historians. That was the claim by the Turkish side, but it was not accepted by the Armenian side. At the time, when those talks are taking place, in Turkey, for example, many Turks said, yes, I think we should invest in academic research of the issue. We need to open all the resources as well as archives. That, as you can see, this issue is not something that Turkey would like to bury, or the Turkish public opinion would like to, turn a blind eye. People say, let's look at the history, but I think it is the job of the experts. As you can see, I think that gives the indication of how Turks approach to this issue. Second, I think, issue, which is an important issue as far as sociology of Turkey is concerned, rather than the politics, okay? When the Armenian church, the Cathedral of the Holy Cross, known in Turkish as Akdamar Church, was restored in 2006 and open to the public, again, I think many people expected that there could be some kind of backlash in Turkey or resistance to this issue, but it wasn't that. In Van, at the time, that is in the eastern part of Turkey, on an island, there weren't much of many hotels, okay? And many Armenians wanted to come to Turkey because once a year, this church is open for congregation. They can come and they can pray, they can have a religious ceremony, but there were not enough rooms and hotels. You know what happened at the time? I think that is also another indication of how Turks approach to this issue, rather than being hijacked by the this genocide claims or historical events. Many people in Van, civilians I'm talking about, they have opened their homes actually to the Armenians. They said they can come and stay with us for a few days. They can go to the church. They can visit, the sites that they value. And as you can see here, I think when you look at the Turkish public opinion, there is a continuation. When this Armenian, the Karabakh issue is resolved, I think psychologically as well as politically, many Turkish people would like to continue the continuation of this effort. The opening of the border, as you said, will be a new chapter, and both countries will win. And it is also, as you said, important for Armenia because it is a gate to open to a big market for the Armenians. Secondly, there is also, as far as this Turkish public opinion is concerned, there is also strong Armenian minority in Turkey. They are Turkish citizens. They have been living in this country for centuries with Turks, and I think they will also support this issue. And when you look at the relations between Armenian minority and the Turkish majority in the country, we did not have any critical, I think, issues. In the past, yes, there were some issues, but in the last 20, 30 years, there has been a peaceful coexistence between the countries, between the communities, and I think that will be a good, let's say, push or motivation for the Turkish government as well. There'll be, public support behind it, but I don't know what will happen, of course, in Armenia. Whether there will be a public support by the Armenian side. Maybe you can also comment on that if you have read anything. But I just want you to look at why in 2008 and 2009, after the football diplomacy, because there was an initiative, but that has failed, that initiative. What will be the difference between what happened in 2008 and 2009 and now? Because these announcements by both sides, because there was normalization, I think, efforts, they have signed the document, but those documents went into the trash later on. What will be the difference this time?
Yes, the normalization efforts back then failed, as I mentioned at the beginning, I think largely because of the domestic public opinion in both countries. They weren't ready, I think. It was a progressive move, quote unquote progressive, and it was within the framework of Turkey, opening up to all its regional neighbors. So it had a certain framework, and it operated from that framework in terms of developing, opening up relations with regional countries, its immediate neighbors. But of course, public opinion, I guess, was not ready. And the dynamic of continued occupation of Azerbaijani lands, that was the biggest spoiler, because it was hard to justify it, explain it at home. It was hard to explain it to Azerbaijan, right? Azerbaijan also reacted to that. So those dynamics, you mentioned that, there's no more occupation. Azerbaijan feels much more confident and comfortable. And we've been talking about Azerbaijan normalizing relations with Armenia. Armenia is the one having the hardest time right now, because it looks like they have lost the war and now they have to make peace. And that's not easy to justify to a domestic opinion. Some parts of maybe a majority, I don't know the opinion polls there. We don't see a lot of opinion polls out of Armenia, but I would assume that majority would still see Azerbaijan in antagonistic terms. I don't know if they see them as enemies still. The political leadership had a hard time navigating all this, especially prosecution of the war was very difficult for them. They didn't expect it to lose it so fast. They didn't expect Russia's the way Russia maneuvered those relationships in those days. So it was relatively quickly over. And in a situation like that, coming back in a year's time and then normalizing with Azerbaijan might be difficult. But with Turkey, I think it's a bit of a different dynamic. Turkey did not fight Armenia. Turkey did help Azerbaijan for sure, but they would benefit a lot from especially trade relations and also counterbalancing Russia in some ways, because they have been under the influence of Russia. Of course, Turkey will not all of a sudden oppose Russian interests in Armenia. I don't think that will happen, but it gives them some breathing room. It gives them an opening. It would help their economy. So I think those dynamics are what's different. And when you were talking about Turkey's reaction, I wanted to also mention, maybe you can talk about that. You followed that very closely in those days. You were involved in those processes to some extent, at least explaining it to Europeans. President Erdogan himself made an announcement about how Turkey actually shared these, common pains and recommended, we get together, discuss this through the commissions you mentioned. Maybe you can also talk about that, because at the highest level of Turkish government, there was this acknowledgement of the events, right? It's just the, how to frame it, how to label it. That's the major difference. Turkey will never accept that genocide definition for it, of course. But how did that evolve at the time? How did people see that?
Thank you, Kadir. I think you raised an important issue, because as we have been talking about, there are two sides of the coin. One is Armenia, the other one is in Turkey. And when you look at the Turkey side, with the AK Party coming to power, with Erdogan coming to power as prime minister and as well as now president, he has always had this soft approach to this issue, rather than cutting the relations between two countries or reacting psychologically or ideologically. It's very well known in Turkey that there has been always a claim that 1915 events, both in Turkey and outside, actually, we have also some Turkish scholars or some politically oriented people in Turkey, that they were siding with the Armenian claims. I mean, it is obvious. But the great majority of Turkey did not want to join the club, but rather than changing the history, rather than becoming hijacked by such kind of political claims, everybody asked for some sort of truth, let's say, commission. Maybe the term is not, it's a misnomer, but as far as Turkey is concerned, until Erdogan coming to power, the classical reaction was, such issue cannot be, even talked or discussed or debated. But I think with Erdogan, there has been a softer approach to the 1915 events, how it's been interpreted by both sides. And in nation states, as everybody knows, I mean, history is rewritten by the founding spirit of the countries. From this perspective, I think when you look at how Turkish history has been shaped or reinterpreted by the founding fathers of Turkey, you will see that there's a nationalist touch on this issue. But there was not only one issue that would shape Turkish identity or Turkish social and political claim. But when you look at Armenia, I think at least that's how we see from Turkey. Maybe if you look at Armenian scholars or Armenian society, there might be some different voices. But I think the 1915 events and the claims of genocide is the main founding block of Armenian identity. That is a troubling issue, because a national identity cannot be based on a single event in history. There might be a chain of events, chain of values, chain of different factors that could shape the identity of a nation. But when you look at Armenian diaspora, that is where I think the main pressure came from. That put a lot of, I think, pressure on the Armenian society and on Armenian politics. I think that is one of the issues we need to address. When you look at from Turkish side, yes, Armenian issue should be discussed, but within the framework of a more open mind, rather than a claim is made and that claim is seen as the historical truth. That is what Turks oppose. As you can see, as I said, there has been a historical Turks claim that there should be some sort of historical commission of historians, that they can look at the evidence, they can look at the historical narrative, rather than being hijacked by political claims. And Turks actually wanted to open all the archives, which previous governments before Erdogan, there was not such some self-confident affairs. And when this discussion started in Turkey, when Erdogan made a statement that Turkey shares pains of everyone who had troubled times when the Ottoman Empire was falling apart and disintegrating. So that is a recognition of the pains. Mm-hmm. And I think Turks did not see the same reaction or some sort of acknowledgement by the Armenian side, because Armenia was just fixed. I mean, so this was something, I think, difference between Armenia and Turkey. And when we look at the continuation of such an approach each and every year, We have seen similar statements by the Turkish government and by Turkish authorities that the pains were there, historically speaking, and everybody should acknowledge and share that pain rather than being politicized and putting pressure on one side because of either diaspora or because of political circles. But what I see here, I think that's one of the differences here is, again, maybe this time Armenian government and Armenian society, they could liberate themselves from the pressure of the Armenian diaspora. But 1915 events are critical for Armenian identity and how it's been, I think, shaped. What would you say about this? Because as I said, yes, Armenian issue is there, but for Turkey, it's a minor issue actually. It's not a major issue for Turkey.
Talip Hocam, when we were planning this session, this episode, we discussed that we probably wouldn't focus as much about the, on the 1915 events, but we ended up there, as you said, because of the outsized importance of this issue, especially outside the country. But I think for common Armenians, for their daily struggles, their sort of daily economic problems, the recently emerging new regional dynamics, they have real problems on the ground. And for many of them, there's not even a question. They won't even debate this issue. So they're way past that. So that could be an advantage, actually. We don't need to, as Turkey and Armenia, they don't need to sit down and try to resolve this issue. It's very, like you said, it's very foundational for Armenian identity, and Turkey will probably never see it eye to eye, in the foreseeable future on this matter. So it is better to focus on probably, trade relations, eventual, areas of cooperation. I don't know what it could be, right? Because the diplomatic strength of Armenia outside the country is not very strong, other than these diaspora, groups in the West, but they are highly focused on a single issue. And they have a problem because they don't necessarily understand maybe the daily, struggles of Armenians in living in Armenia. So this could be an opportunity for them to rethink their sort of focus, because, hey, Turkey and Armenia are already moving past this, moving beyond this. At least they're discussing trade, they're discussing, human-to-human relations. Maybe universities will start cooperating. It's interesting that we wanted to focus on a bit more the regional dynamics, but we ended up there. But hopefully the two countries, they will be able to establish parameters, frameworks that are not going to be sacrificed to this issue, right? The 1915 events and how we see it, because that we've seen that in the past, it played a spoiler role. And again, maybe we should bring back our initial cautiousness about all this, because this is politics and things can may just not materialize. But nevertheless, as you outlined very carefully the Turkish position, Turkey is in a much more comfortable position in terms of, normalizing with Armenia. And the critical thing that the Foreign Minister emphasized, you mentioned this also, every step of the way, Turkey will cooperate with Azerbaijan on this. So these should give us hope, and it should hopefully help normalize the relationship between the two. But we shouldn't forget about other dynamics. Maybe I can ask you, how Turkey sees the relationship with both Russia and Iran, because, the Turkey and Azerbaijan changed the dynamics on the ground. And one more thing, maybe that corridor that's supposed to open in, through Nahchivan, right? So that would allow trade, Turkish trade with Central Asia, that will be much easier if there's normalized relations with Armenia. But how do you think regional countries might play a spoiler role, whether they would? How is that seen in Turkey?
When you look at the issue from an economic and trade perspective, I think you are right that it will be a win-win situation for all countries located in the region, especially for Armenia. And also, there is another side of the issue. You have just mentioned regional countries, but the EU and the US have always been supporting this sort of normalization talks between the countries. As you can see, if Iran and Russia are cautious, and if they try to, play a spoiler role, I think US and Europe can balance this, as far as I can see. So we will see it anyway. As you have just mentioned, Russia will not disappear from the scene, and Iran is there, and I think will try to, remain as an influential actor. But I think when we look at the regional dynamics and how they are changing, Russia's focus today is Ukraine, as you know, and Russia do not want to open new frontiers in other countries. When you look at it from this perspective, I think Russia will look at it very cautiously, of course. Russia do not want to see that Armenia will get out of its orbit, it's for sure. And traditionally speaking, I think Iran will remain as a country that would align with Armenia, because during the fight between Armenia and Azerbaijan, even during the Second War, we have seen that Iran was much, I think, nearer to closer to Armenia. That will remain there, but I think at the end of the day, many things will depend on the will of the Armenian people and Armenian decision makers. But also, as you have said, I think I do not want to undermine the influence and power of the Armenian diaspora all around the world. They are very powerful in Europe as well as in the States. But when we look at the government positions, the EU and the US, as far as the governments are concerned, I think these are in favor of such talks, opening a new chapter in the region that would, stabilize the region, as well as, opening new economic opportunities for all the countries. Kadir, I think with that we come to the end of our discussion and debate. I think we will monitor and observe what will happen between Armenia and Turkey, and maybe in our next episodes we can invite someone from Armenia to see how this issue is being discussed and debated and what will be the future. Thank you very much for joining us, and let's say goodbye to our audience. Goodbye to everyone, and hopefully we can meet at another episode. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Talip Hocam.